Hey guys, it's Peter from LostAngler.com, and today we're going to be tying a Deceiver pattern. Originally this pattern was brought up by a gentleman by the name of Lefty, and if you've been fly fishing for at least 15 seconds, you've probably heard of Lefty. This isn't his exact pattern. I've made a couple changes on it. It borrows from a few different disciplines in fly tying that you might use for steelhead or muskie even. But I found it to be an extremely great pattern. I've used it all over God's creation. And as a matter of fact, it's become my absolute favorite fly for fishing for speckled trout at night underneath the lights. So here's the fly. Stick around. We'll get it tied up. Alright guys, to start this fly out, we're going to start with the size 2 gamakatsu B10S stinger hook. Alright. And to go do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and give it full thread wrap all the way up and down with this good old-fashioned white cotton sewing thread. Once we've got it wrapped all the way back, the first component we're going to put on is going to be white craft fur. Now we're going to tie this pattern in white. I found it to be a great color all the way around for just about anything you'd want to do. And then after that, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some flashabou. So first things first, let's put the white on. Something interesting about craft fur that they don't normally go about telling you is that craft fur has a lot of the same properties as deer hair. If you'll notice, it's a really thick ball down here on the end, and if I pull it out, I get a lot of the fibers out. You see how I get the shorter fibers out? It's almost like deer hair in that it has guard hairs. Just about. Not quite. That's just because, like I said, it's an extruded fiber. Alright, so there we go. We've got it out. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to size up the amount of craft fur on the hook. We want at least the same length as the hook shank. And once we've got that, we're going to go ahead and give it a good wrap. Get this straightened up on the shank. Boom, there we go. Alright. Good thread wrap. Alright, let's go ahead and trim off the excess. Alright, the next material we're going to put on after this is going to be white, pearlescent crystal flash. And if you're unfamiliar with this material, we're going to be using flashabou. My bad. Pearl flashabou. But anyway, the reason we're using flashabou is because if you're unfamiliar with this material and you look at it during the daylight hours when it's in the water, it really doesn't make too much show. But the truth is, once you get underneath the lights at night, for some reason, it really just pops. And it has an amazing amount of flow to it that you don't find in things like crystal flash. So here we go. We're going to take 4 strands of this flashabou. Go ahead and take it, put it over the thread. If I can get my fingers to work. Might be a problem today. Alright, there we go. Now we're cooking with gas. We've got it. We're going to bring it down and wrap it forward. Back down the hook. Alright, now the next thing we want to do is we're going to take it and kind of spread it out in our hands like so, and kind of cut it all at a different length. And what this does is it gives a shimmer effect all the way down, because if you have all of it down to the same length, it doesn't really give it that shimmery effect, and instead what it actually will do is to put all the point of light at the same stripe, same point on the fly. The next thing we're going to pull out is going to be white saddle hackle. Now you can use other types of feathers like slapping or even neck hackle, but I found that I personally like saddle hackle. Now that I've got my white saddle hackle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pair them up like so that they kind of come together, and then we're going to take a measure on them like we do on all of our saddle hackle, pull off what we don't need like so, trim it off, Then we're going to take the feathers, put them against the hook shank, being careful to leave the fibers of the feather, some of it on there, so that it has something to tie on to. Loose thread wraps it first, tightening as we go up, and boom, there we go. Now just keep in mind this doesn't have to be perfect, and if ever your feather does like mine, these two did right here, and points up with you, what you can do is grab these two fibers right down here, these stem pieces, pull them up and pull the feather down, and that should correct your problem. Then just come back over, make sure you've got some nice solid wraps, and there you go, boom, problem solved. And you can trim up these stem pieces from the feather. Next thing you're going to do is repeat the process again with the next two feathers. Now when Lefty does it, what he does, he actually just grabs a clump of feathers from a strung pack of saddle hackle, and he ties them on that way. I'm sure that works absolutely fine, because as I've said before, it once they get wet and get chewed on, flies that is, it doesn't make a hill of beans worth of difference on little things like as to whether or not your wing on your fly came together perfect or not. The fish plainly do not care, but I do. So I make sure it's all in line. Once again, not something you have to do. It's not even that important, but something I like to do. So I like to match it up to on each side. Alright, now we got that trimmed off. The next thing we're going to add on there is going to be marabou, white blood quill marabou. And in order to do that, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually kind of palmer the marabou onto the hook shank. And I don't know if you've ever palmered marabou before, but it's not difficult and it's not hard at all. Alright, now with this marabou, what I've done, as you can see, is I've kind of stripped it down off the stem some. The reason we're going to do this is because we're about to palmer it. So what I do is I start right here on the back, right at the end of that thread hump, bring it up, tie it down, make sure it's nice and tight, then I'm going to cut off that stem. After that, I'm going to bring my thread forward up onto the hook shank, right about here. Then I'm going to bring it over, palmering the marabou like you would any other sort of feather. Like if you were doing a dry fly or a woolly booger or just whatever else. See, I'm just wrapping it around over and over and over again. And as you can see, the marabou is doing a great job of giving a lot of coverage. It's going to give a lot of flow, and it's just going to make a nice all-around fly. Another thing is, the reason we're putting the marabou on underneath everything, the rest of the deer hair, is because marabou is not the toughest material in the world. It will just get ripped to shreds by a nice fish. So we're going to wrap it underneath everything, pull it on back, and you kind of want to ensure that when you're doing this, that the marabou doesn't really go too far back. It's going to flow really nice here at the back of the fly, but it's not going to impede too terribly much, because I want it to be further back than what I'm going to do the collar so that it breathes in the water, but I don't want it to be so far back that it'll wrap up the rest of the workings of the fly right there. Alright, so now we've got that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our bucktail. We're going to start with natural white bucktail. And this is the part that, oh, and coincidentally, remember when I told you this fly borrows from steelhead? Well, that's the part that comes from steelheading. There's just a slew of different steelhead flies where that's what you do. So, anyway, so we got our bucktail right here. What we're going to do is we're going to size it up, make sure it doesn't go too far back. You'll notice the bucktail ends here and the hackle ends here. We got just a slight space, and that's enough for me. We're going to take our bucktail, trim it off, like so. Then we're going to take it and we're going to tie it on backwards, just like this. We're going to let our fingers bring it around the hook shank, like so. Give it a few loose wraps. Bring it back just a scotch. Tighten up nicely. And then we're going to take the bucktail and fold it back on itself. Like so. Now the reason we're doing this is because what we're wanting to do, we're wanting to give the illusion of a bulky fly without actually having it. And if these fibers from the hair are pushing upwards, like so, what's going to happen is it's going to help hold all the rest of the bucktail that we're going to tie on onto the fly without having to add just an ungodly amount. So you'll see it's already pushed up the wing really well. So there we go. Alright. I'm going to reset the camera so it's a little easier to see everything at this point. And we're going to see how this goes. Alright, now that we've got that tied on in reverse, what we're going to do is we're going to tie this on in about three, maybe 4 different layers. We're going to bring this up, put a little more bucktail on, bring it over, and I'm just going to let this spin around again. It's going to give some nice coverage all the way around, hopefully. Alright. Okay. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to place some bucktail strictly on the bottom, and then once again strictly on the top. Just small amounts here. We only want little by little. That's how we're going to get this done. So here we go. This one's up on the top. Once again in white. So, here we go. And the reason we're doing it this way with so many small layers is because we want to build up the head on the fly. And the other reason is, if you've ever fished for speckled trout at night, you realize that the teeth they have are really good at chewing up flies. And the more bits of bucktail you have on there in different layers, the longer you're going to be able to use that fly that evening. And the longer I can use the same fly, the happier I am in my life. So, alright. I want to spend more time catching fish and less time retying flies. Tying on flies. Alright, there we go. Boom. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put on, we're going to give this fly a little bit of color and a little bit of depth. We're going to do the back of it first. You can do the back in as many colors as you might like to. I'm going to do this one in black. I found that it works really well in that color. Simple, works well, and at night they really do not care too terribly much that I've noticed. I'm sure that experience could have been different for everyone. But we're going to go ahead and start with the black. Here we go. Take this. Once again, take the black. Pull out the guard hairs. Set it down against the fly. Make sure we're going to have some good size and depth to it. Wrap it over once, twice, 3 or 4 times, however many. And we're going to bring it nice and tight and hold it in place. I'm going to spread the hairs out a little bit, not too much. Bring it around again, tighten up. Once that's done, get yourself a nice neat head all the way forward. Boom. Next thing we're going to do is the underbelly, and in the underbelly we're going to do it in red. Because if there's one thing I've learned about saltwater fish, or fish in general, I think, if they look and they can see red like say blood or whatever, and they can interpret that as a weakness, what they're going to do is the only logical thing a predator should do. He's going to hit the weakest animal out there. It's less danger to him, less expense, and it's easier. Less energy used for the greatest gain. So there we go. We got the red going down. We're going to bring it up some. I don't want it to go quite to that far. That should do. We do want a nice swath of red. Alright. Once we got that, once again, trim it up. Bring it nice and neat. Now we're not really worried about having too big of a head at this point. We're actually kind of trying to build it up, like I said. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of blue crystal flash. I believe it's blue smolt. Alright, so we got the blue smolt right here. We're going to do the same thing we did last time. Bring it up, loop it over, which basically folds it in half. I'm using 4 strands. So, bring this over, bring it down, and I want to make sure it's roughly there, forming a nice lateral line on the fly. Let's bring it down a little bit more, bring this side down a little bit more. Now if you have a rotary vise, this is a great time to spin it around and check it out. I personally do not, although if anybody wants to make a contribution, you can go to lostangler.com and get my contact info, and I will happily accept their gift of a rotary vise. Alright, so we got it right there. We're going to take this blue smolt and we're going to trim it up. I want it to be about to there. Alright, and I want this to actually be a solid line, and the reason is it's right there in the middle of the fly. And crystal flash isn't like flash blue. It does a good job of distributing out its color all the way through. Alright, so there we go. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add on a little bit of peacock herl. Alright, well I've got 4 or 5 pieces of peacock herl right here, and I'd have to say honestly the more the merrier. And I actually want this to extend a little bit further down the fly and have on the rest of it. So you notice it kind of goes past the wing. It's on top of the fly. Not past the saddle hackle, mind you. You can almost do it about even. That should be fine. We want to make sure the saw lines up really well. Gives us a nice head to tie on to. And there we go. The reason we're adding the peacock herl is because it gives it a very nice green iridescence in the night. Usually that's the 2 dominant colors you see on the back of these bait fish in the evening. It's going to be that black, and you kind of see a faint green iridescence. And the peacock herl helps to add to both, and it looks great. So that's another reason why I'm tying on so many pieces of peacock herl on here, so that after fish 3 you still have peacock herl on the fly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and tie this off. And then we're going to use some Z-epoxy, 2-part epoxy, to put on the eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this off. And I'll kind of go through and tell you about the kind of knot I tie. Now, a lot of people use a whip finish. I use 3 double half hitches. And the reason I do this is because, to be honest with you, it's simpler. Simpler to me, anyway. Simpler for me to learn. Also, it's the most traditional knot to tie in fly fishing. It's the way we did it originally before the whip fish came out. Now, I'm not an extreme traditionalist. I don't even think you could call me a traditionalist. Warm water and saltwater fly fishermen by nature are anything but traditionalist. But I found that it works very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back over my finger, then bring it back through its loop twice. On the third time I tie this one real quick, I'm going to show you exactly how it works. And if you're having trouble with your whip finish, this is a great alternative. Hold my finger out. I wrap the fly line around it. Bring it back around, underneath and back over, so that I have 2 pieces. Then I'm going to take this piece, cross it over, bring it under and through that loop using my bobbin. I'm going to repeat this again so that I do this twice. Then I'm going to use the bobbin to help guide my thread up, pull it tight. Bring it around, tighten up, and there it is. I've never had problems with this knot, ever. Works fine for me. And the truth is, by the time you get done gluing it or whatever, it's not moving. I don't really care what knot you use. Dave Whitlock doesn't even use a knot, he just uses Zap-A-Gap. And I'm guaranteeing you that by the time you're done wrapping this thing and hitting it with some Zap-A-Gap, there is no way on God's green earth that Zap-A-Gap is going to let it go. So there we go. We've applied the good old-fashioned Love My Nails, which is about the cheapest thing in the world I've ever found and works amazingly well. I've never had any of it untangle or untie. So, alright, we're about to go ahead and move towards the eye setting. Right now we're going to let that fingernail polish cure. Now that the fingernail polish is hardened, it doesn't take but a second, giving me just long enough to mix up the epoxy. I'm going to go ahead and coat the outside where the thread is with epoxy. Epoxy is a two-part epoxy. It's kind of the forerunner to clear cure goo. I'm using a 5-minute epoxy. It works fine. I will say this in regards to in regards to epoxy compared to clear cure goo, I'm going to use up what I have left of this epoxy, and after that I will be buying the clear cure goo, CCG for short. Alright, they're using plain everyday stick-on eyes. And I'm going to put it on. One on each side, of course. Like so. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and arrange them up. Make sure that they're up to my satisfaction. I'm going to let the Zap-A-Gap cure, and then we're going to go back in and put the filler in. I want to take the time to show you exactly how I like to arrange my eyes on my flies on these deceivers. I like to kind of bring them up together like this so that it gives kind of an angled presentation like that. And the reason I do that is two reasons. One, I feel like it gives a different movement in the water than if I just kind of have them side to side. The second reason is, to be honest with you, and this is the biggest reason I think, is that when I look at it like this, I find it highly comical. Alright, so now that we've got the epoxies all nice and cured up, what we're going to do is we're going to fill up the spots around the eyes. So this way, what we're doing is we're making sure there's no gaps. And the reason we're doing this is, if you don't, as soon as your first fish hits this thing, he's going to go ahead and do you the favor of knocking these eyes off. So, you don't want that to happen. So go ahead and come back around it like so. Then, make sure we keep the eye of the hook clear. Bring it around on both sides. Nice even coating. All around. Alright. That was great. I just sounded like the guy with the happy trees. Anyway, I'm going to take it now. We're going to flip it over so that we can give it the same treatment on the other side. Show it the love there too. Alright. Now that we got it flipped, get a look at it. Give it the epoxy treatment on the other side too. Like so. Now if you have one, this is a great time to put it on a one of those rotators that helps you to dry your flies off, so that everything kind of, as it cures, you don't have a gob just sitting down there on the bottom. Everything look nice and neat. Another good thing about this epoxy head is it adds a little bit of weight to the fly. Not too much though, but it does add a lot to the action, I think. This fly will actually give you a very nice action, kind of similar to that of a soft plastic fluke. Those of you may be unfamiliar with flukes. It's a soft plastic by a company called Zoom that's commonly used in conventional bass fishing. And before I started fly fishing, it was one of my favorite artificial lures. It worked very well for me over the years, but now, however, I pretty much fly fish, and that's all I do. This is my substitution for that. So we're going to take it now. Have this nice head. We're just going to dry it. I like to turn it over like this, so that hopefully if it does run, it doesn't run back into the fly itself. So that, while that finishes, is the Deceiver. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video on tying the Deceiver. If you enjoyed it, please click the subscribe button. Make sure you leave me some comments. Let me know if there's anything that I could do better to make this a better set of tying tutorials for you. Another thing you can do is check out lostangler.com. We've got our new articles up that have been written in the past couple months. Sorry we've been kind of slow to update. Things have been hectic. Also, we're going to have pictures of the canoes that we build up, so you can check those out. And if you want to, you can give us a call, see about having one ordered for you. We're also going to put up the flies we tie and that we use when we guide out and about, and so you could order those if you wanted to as well. And we just have some of these printed. We have the new Lost Angler sticker. You can order those from us as well. So, appreciate you watching. Thank you guys, and we'll catch up with you again.